The station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for supporting our channel by watching and listening.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
It's a whole new...
The people have spoken.
Austin Riley, who's, he's not playing anymore, but when he was, 1.8, still at 128 strikeouts. That was months ago.
And we're back for another season to deliver.
From a fantasy perspective for next year, he's going to be a top 3 shortstop again. Probably, second round. I think a mid-second round is about where he should go.
Have your drink ready.
Then you hold off, wait, and you hope that Perdomo's there for you in the 5th or 6th. But if he's not, then your entire strategy just shit to bed.
And prepare to be entertained.
Guys like Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, those guys need to also perform. Gary Carpenter, in the heat of the moment. And those guys, all 3 of those guys I just listed, are all streaky guys.
Welcome to another season of Bourbon N Ball.
I'm Doug, Mikey V from Clearwater, Florida over there. Finish your drink, go to bed. It's Friday night. Have fun, guys. Take care. Well, what's going on, everybody? As you can see, I am here by myself right now. My friend who I've done this podcast with for the last 3 years, Mikey V, will be joining me shortly. He's got a couple of things he's got to take care of. He's down in Florida. They got that little cold streak going on or whatever it is. But he will be joining me. And what an episode we have for you. This is Bourbon N Ball. I'm Doug. I'm coming to you from Foxborough in the cave over here behind me. Mikey V, who will be joining us, will be coming to you from Clearwater, Florida. It's going to be a very interesting show. A lot of opinions, a lot of debates. It's going to be very interesting. We have a lot of stuff to go over, a lot of free agent signings, how those free agent signings, how that interprets to the draft boards, right? I mean, your fantasy draft is coming up, regardless of when. I mean, most of them are usually the end of February, early March, right? Right around spring training. You don't want to do it too early because someone gets hurt. You get screwed. But you want to do it at a decent time. And I know with drafts coming up, you really want to look at these free agents that have been signed in the lineups and the rotations. But you also want to look at the impact that they have on these lineups and these rotations, right? For instance, you sign you get a Kyle Tucker. What does he do to a lineup? Look at Juan Soto. What did he do to that Yankees lineup? They add insurance. They bring more to the table. They make everybody around them better. You drop someone who could be a 5-hitter now, a 6-hitter, and it just makes them that much more stronger. That whole lineup, what they can bring to a lineup is what you really want to look at. And that's what we're going to do for you today. We're going to look at the signings. Obviously, some of them I think are bad. Some of them are good. But then on top of that, we're going to look at the lineups. We're going to look at the rotations. We're going to say, well, you know what? He's going to make this guy better and this guy better. Or I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give too much away because there are certain players that I don't know will help a lineup that were added, that were big free agents, that I don't think will help a lineup as much as it got helped last year. For me, I don't want to spoil it, but Alex Bregman to the Cubs, and we're going to talk about that a little more, and we're going to break down that lineup. But you're going from a Kyle Tucker to a Bregman. Is that really going to have a better impact? Like, who's a better player? I think obviously Kyle Tucker is, regardless of fantasy, regardless of baseball. Kyle Tucker is the better player of the two. He's younger. He's a 5-tool guy. Bregman, you can kind of make the assumption maybe now he's going to be injury prone. He's older, right? You don't know if he's going to make that lineup that better as it was last year. So you're replacing the Tucker with the Bregman. Is it going to work? I don't know. I honestly have no idea. I'd rather have Tucker. I think they overpaid for Bregman, but we're going to talk about that later. Before all that, let's just start talking about Bourbon N Ball, right? That's us. That's what we do. That's what we drink. As you can tell, I have my Bourbon N Ball bourbon glass right here. You take a sip out. Oh, the first sip is always the best, isn't it? All right, so me and Mikey V have been doing fantasy baseball for over 20 years now. This is our 21st year, I believe. It's an ESPN points league, head-to-head. It is a keeper league. You get to keep 2 keepers for 2 years, and then after that, they go back into the draft. And, yeah, I mean, you learn a lot playing fantasy for that long. And we decided, we loved it so much. We were like, well, we were going on Facebook, and you have all these fantasy pages. You have CBS Fantasy Baseball and Scott White and all those people. And they'll sit there and they'll break trades down, and you'll say, hey, I just traded this guy for this guy. And you'll probably be excited about it because that's your guy. And as Mikey V always says, you go out and you get your guy. And then when you have him, right, people just knock you for it. Oh, it's a horrible trade. You got fleece. You got all this stuff. We're not with the negativity. I know Mikey V for sure. I am too. If there's a guy you want and you want to go over trade for him, and that's your guy, go out and over trade for him. I mean, it's opinions. Anybody in fantasy can be good at any time, like for the most part, right? I mean, it just blows my mind that you have these people with these podcasts, and I have one, and Mikey has one with me, but but they make it sound like they know it all, and whatever they tell you is right, and all this other stuff. Listen, we decided we don't want to do that. Right? We don't want to make you sound stupid. We don't care, right? We want to give you the facts. So if you're going to do a trade and you want to go out and you say, let's say you want to Pete Alonso, I'll say, hey, listen, I understand Pete Alonso. I know what he can bring to the table. He can bring 40 plus home runs. He can also bring a 250 average and 180 strikeouts. You weigh the bad and the good, and then you go from there. Like, we're not here to make fun of you or anything like that. We're here to just give you the facts. What you do with the facts is totally up to you, and that's it. And so we decided to create Bourbon N Ball. And, it's been fun, man. This is our 3rd year doing it. Of course, we're on Military Broadcast Radio, MBR Radio, which we also have a YouTube page if you want to go on and follow that. We're on Patriot Radio. We're on Roku. I mean, it's pretty fun, and we decided last year to create our first Bourbon N Ball baseball, fantasy baseball league. It's a 12-team head-to-head. I like to call it Beat the Experts because experts in fantasy baseball are not really experts. Let's be honest with each other. Numbers are numbers. You can kind of mold them any way you want to prove a point. I think in fantasy baseball, it's a little more straightforward than that, Pete Alonso, I don't like Pete Alonso, but in a points league where you do get penalized for strikeouts, there's no appeal for him for me. I don't like that, So it is what it is. I get it. You like your guy, but hey, we decided let's create this Bourbon N Ball league. Let's see if you can beat the experts. And last year was our first year. I won. Yes, I know. Crazy, right? It wasn't anything I planned. Yeah. So nice out there. Oh man, it's just again. No, it's all about getting hot at the right time. Listen, you can beat anybody at any time in fantasy baseball. That's what I like about it. It's very unpredictable, and I kind of got hot at the right time. I didn't have an amazing season. I know Adam, I think, only had 2 losses in the season, but he was a one and done in the playoffs. That's just how fantasy baseball is. You can have amazing, amazing regular season, but in the playoffs, you'll just crap the bed. And that's what happens. It is what it is. You know, what are you going to do? But we decided to create the league. I won the first one, and we're bringing it back. So we have 10 players, including me and Mike, 12 total. We're finalizing a draft date, which is going to be a Friday. It's either going to be the 6th or the 13th of March, and it's going to be live draft on here again. It's going to be a live draft. I'm going to randomize the draft order. I'm going to randomize the divisions. There'll be 2 divisions. The bottom 4 teams are out. They will make the playoffs, and then we'll go from there. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be awesome, right? We're going to do the draft on air. I mean, I think we were told we were one of the few shows that actually did live drafts last year. I think it's a great experience. You know, it's fun. You're drinking, you're talking. If you don't drink, you're just having a good time. You're laughing. You know, some of the picks you laugh about. You know, I got Corbin Carroll really late in like the 2nd or 3rd round last year, and everybody laughed at me. I was like, dude, Corbin Carroll's good. You know, there are some that you'll get bargains on, and there's some you won't. You know, some people, I think Blake had a top 5 pick, and he drafted Paul Skeens. So, you know, everybody laughed at him for it, but Skeens is a top 5 pitcher. There's no such thing as a bad pick in the first couple rounds anyways, you know. But we did it. I won. We're bringing it back. So we're going to do another live draft. Some people from last year are going to come on and try to avenge their loss. And we have a mix of newer people, a couple of people that have been watching the show since our first season. Cam's out there. He's going to be on. So it's going to be fun. You know, mark it on your calendar if you're new to fantasy. If you just like looking at how people value stuff, especially based on the league format. You know, this is going to be a points league. So, yeah, there are things you got to consider for sure. Strikeouts is one of them. You know, the stigma with point leagues to me is the overvalue on players that shouldn't be overvalued. You know, I already talked about Pete Alonso. I think he's overvalued in points leagues. Let me talk about another guy. Let me talk about Ellie De La Cruz, right? You're going to be like, well, De La Cruz, I mean, you know, listen, last year he was a top 10, top 8 player in any format and in any position. I'm not saying he's not a great player. That was 2 years ago. Last year, he didn't. 2 years ago, he stole so many bases. It offset the strikeouts. He had 212 strikeouts, you know? And I told Mike last year, and he agreed. He said, listen, if this guy isn't going out there and he's not stealing that many bases next year when you draft him, he's not worth a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. You know, he's a wild card. And there were a couple of them in the draft this year, specifically, you know, J-Rod, De La Cruz. Like, these are all top picks where they strike out a lot, they steal a lot, but if they're not stealing and they're striking out more, they're not really helping you out. You know, you're getting a negative point for every strikeout. So those stolen bases offset that. And if they're not striking out, if they're not stealing 40 bases and they're striking out, well, then that's not a top 10, top 20 pick. I don't care. It's math. Look it up, you know, but that's how people value stuff. So it's fun. It's interesting. It'll really get you going for whenever your draft is. It might even help you out. You know, it's a 12-team draft. So those usually go a lot deeper. You'll get to see some picks. I know last year for myself, I went Cam Smith. I went Shaw. So there were a lot of deep picks I got late, and some turned out all right. Some were just really bench. You know, a lot of times when you're drafting and you're in the, the 20s for a round, you're really just drafting depth. And that's what it was, right? I mean, that's the appeal to a lot of these guys is they can play 3 positions. You know, Xavier Edwards, who doesn't strike out a lot, you can put him at short. You can put him at second. Like, those are the type of players where you can get value really late in a draft. And because they don't strike out a lot in a points league, that's not going to hurt you, right? So, like I said, we're still voting on it. It's either going to be the 6th or the 13th of March. It's going to be on a Friday. It's going to be on this show. And we're going to the draft screen in the middle. We're going to have all our faces around that screen. We're going to have a drink and we're going to draft. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And if you have nothing to do, and you're interested and you like baseball, and join. You can leave comments in the chat. I'll read them during the show while we're drafting. I think it'd be fun. Anybody can do it. Come on and join. And then if you really like it that much, and then maybe next year when we do it again and we bring it back, we can let you in if you want to come in, and we need some players. So join us. It's fun. It's free to join our league. So next year if you do want to come in, it's free. If you win, we ship you a bottle of bourbon to your house. Obviously, you have to be 21 plus to accept it, but we do ship it. And if you don't drink, well, we'll send you some merch. We'll send you some Bourbon N Ball merch, maybe some drinking glasses right here, nice little Bourbon N Ball glass. Or, we're thinking about getting some really cool like half zip sweatshirts with the Bourbon N Ball logo right here. But that's going to be probably maybe in a month or so. I'm thinking I might order some for myself. Why not, right? But anyways, so yeah, join us for the draft. And yeah, a lot of the numbers we're going to go over in the show is from our ESPN head-to-head points league. But a lot of times, if you're a top 10 player in a points league, you're a top 10 player in any format. I don't care what it is, So a lot of these numbers will translate into a roto league or, whatever, any type of format league, really. It's really when you start getting nitpicky into the splitting hairs of those people in the mid rounds where you start looking at the formats a little more in depth. But for the sake of the show, this one specifically, the numbers that I'm going to give you for these players are specifically from our points league from ESPN last year. Okay. And of course, coming to you from all these military affiliated stations, I myself, was a paratrooper in the Army for 6 years. Over 6 years, I had jumps in Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and I had a combat tour in Afghanistan in all of 2012. I, believe it or not, extended for some apparent reason. I didn't have a girlfriend, and I just extended. So I stayed another 9 months there. So very exciting stuff, fun stuff. So I was a combat veteran in there, and so that was my military affiliation. I know Mikey V comes from a family with a lot of military affiliation as well. I mean, his grandfather was in World War II. His dad was drafted in the Air Force for Vietnam. So, that's good stuff, So again, waiting on Mikey V, but he's going to hop in when he's here. But I'm just going to continue on because you know what? We got some stuff to talk about. So let's just continue on. And a little more for you. And I'm going to start this free agent segment with one of the bigger free agents that I started the show with. I'm going to show you a little clip from last episode that we had live. This was me talking about this specific free agent. And you can tell me if I got it wrong or if I got it right. Take a look. They want you to make the splash. They want you to sign these big players. But it's like, obviously, at some point, you got to say, hey, enough's enough. I'm not going to be paying for this guy who's just not worth it. I'm not going to open my wallet for somebody who's just not worth it. And, I didn't think he was worth the first contract. But, they come back and they give him another one and they offer him the same one. And then now they're giving him more. And he's still debating. Well, you know what? Fuck him. That's what I say. I hate to be blunt. Yes, I was a little blunt on that one. But I'm pretty sure everybody knows who I'm talking about. And man, that stash, that was epic. That was an epic stash. All right. So I am talking about none other than Alex Bregman. Okay. Listen, I know there could be some bias in this, right? I think the Chicago Cubs, I think they made to me, it's a puzzling signing. You're agreeing to terms with a third baseman, contract 5 years, $175 million. Oh my God. He'll make 35 a year. Obviously a full no trade clause. He'll have no opt-outs. So I get it. Some of it, I guess. He did have a decent year last year. Here, the number 273, 18 homers, 62 ribbies, 64 runs, 70 strikeouts, 1 stolen base. He gave you 307 total points in a points league, or 2.7 to start, which is pretty good. Average is about 2.2. So he's up there for that. Now, let's talk about his second half. I mean, the guy, he tanked. He comes back from injury. I mean, for 2 weeks, he was batting 133 at one point. I think this is to me, it's not a smart move. I think he's not worth the money. I think based off of lineup projections, and now you got Matt Shaw, who's the odd man out. I really do believe Bregman is going to wish he never signed this deal. I really do. There's nothing in there that makes me think he's going to succeed. Now let's take a look at the lineup. Here's the other point of this entire conversation that I'm having, especially from a fantasy perspective. Now, when you go from a guy like Kyle Tucker, who I think Kyle Tucker is up here, and Bregman, to me, he's a 1C. Kyle Tucker's your 1A, and Bregman's a 1C now. He's older, he's injury prone. I don't get the appeal of it. I think if you compare this year's lineup versus last year's with Tucker in it, it's not stronger. It's not. If anything, you could say, well, maybe you kind of hurt yourself a little bit because now you're taking out Shaw, right? I think they just signed a big bat to sign a big bat. I don't know what to expect. It really is, PCA second half, he tanked. If you want to go into your draft targeting a PCA in a points league, feel free. Waste a top 25 pick on him. I could care less. PCA is not on my radar. Listen, I'll give him credit. He had one of the best second halves for a young hitter in a very long time. But fantasy baseball is all about what have you done for me lately. And PCA, if you look at what he did for you lately, if you owned him last year, he probably cost you a playoff spot, right? I mean, I just honestly, I can't remember the last time a player went so hot and so cold all at once. It was crazy. So if you want to target PCA, I say you go target him. Like I said, you're taking Bregman out, you're taking Tucker out, you're putting Bregman in. That's not an upgrade. That's not an upgrade. Anybody in that lineup now, it's the lineup. There were people to me that performed better than I thought they would. I think Michael Busch at first base. First base is a premium position. Once that run of first baseman comes off, Michael Busch is right there. Yeah, he had a pretty decent year. I wouldn't mind getting him later on as a stash or something. But I am not going to reach for any of these players. There's nothing to tell me that I want to. If Bregman falls to my lap in the third round, and I'm in like a 12 team or something like that, then maybe I'll do Bregman. But he's got no protection. This lineup to me, if I'm an opposing pitcher in baseball, in fantasy baseball, it doesn't scare me. It really doesn't. I think the signing was just a signing to sign somebody. And I don't know what they expect is going to happen. I don't know how they think this is going to translate to wins, replacing a Tucker with a Bregman. Obviously I think this lineup is not going to look like it does right there. Happ is always going to be your leadoff guy. Then you probably go Bregman, then you go Busch, then you go Seiya, then you go PCA, then it goes like that. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't reach for any of these guys. I really wouldn't. I don't know. And what the crazier part is, like, who would you draft first, right? Would you rather have a Bregman or would you rather have a PCA? I'd probably go Bregman for sure. The strikeouts, he doesn't strike out a lot. PCA, the second half, a lot of strikeouts. I think at one point he was batting like 150 for like 2 or 3 weeks. So, yeah, there's some hesitation with him. Listen, I'm not a PCA guy. I'm not a Bregman guy. But third base, infield in general, except for shortstops, there's a drop. There's a cliff. I think shortstops, you could probably get a really good one really late. We also saw Perdomo last year. Like, there's not gonna be a lot of people buying that hype into the draft this year. So you could actually get a pretty decent deal on him. We're going to talk about that Diamondbacks lineup and who they added. And let's not forget when Josh Naylor left that lineup, when Eugenio Suarez left that lineup, Perdomo was still producing. It's not like that entire offense took a back turn. They were still hitting the ball pretty well when they lost some of their bigger hitters. So, if I'm buying or selling right now, I'm buying the Cubs. I'm selling the Cubs and I'm buying the Diamondbacks. It's just how it is. Again, formats are formats, and your fantasy format's going to dictate where you draft and who you draft and your positions. But right now, this Cubs lineup does nothing for me. It honestly, it doesn't. Hap strikes out a lot. Seiya strikes out a lot. I think he had 180 last year. PCA, the second half, strikes out a lot. Like, if I'm an opposing pitcher and I'm in fantasy and I see these going up against the Cubs, I might start him. If he's an SP3 and he's going up against the Cubs, I might start him. There's nothing in there that scares me. And I did have Hap last year, and I ended up doing a trade for him. And you want to talk about another person that's up and down. It's like when he's going, he's going. Like, Hap can hit you 5 home runs in a week, but can also hit you none and strike out 10 or 12 times. A lot of question marks in this lineup. I do like Nico Hoerner. I think he's a really good second baseman. And to me, second base is the thinnest position in baseball fantasy. It is. If you think about it, he finished top 5. Marte's number 1. I mean, if your number 1 fantasy second baseman is Ketel Marte and he's 31, 32 years old, there's not that many good second basemen. So I do like Nico. I think, obviously he needs to be up in that lineup too. You could even go Hap, Nico, Bregman, Bush, Seiya, or Seiya, Bush, and PCA. And it's not a bad lineup. It's just from a fantasy perspective, you have to take a back seat and you have to break this down and say to yourself, what was different than last year? What did they do different from last year? They went out and they got Bregman, and they replaced Tucker. Tucker's better than Bregman. So I don't think they did much. I think they needed to sign Bregman. And, it's a lot of question marks. I don't know what's going to happen with that lineup. I don't know. It's just, you just really can't predict it. Bregman, when he's healthy, he's a stud. We all saw what he did the first half of the season. But he's an injury-prone type guy, right? I think you could label him that now. He's in his early 30s. He came back. He was hitting like 320 the first half of the season, comes back the second half of the season, and, he's hitting like 240. He finishes the year with a 273 average. 18 homers, only 70 strikeouts. And that's, to me, that's what you're drafting this guy for. In a points league anyway, since you're drafting because he didn't strike out a lot. And if your league, gives you negative points for a strikeout, then that's the type of player you want. But keep in mind that there could be a possibility that he does go on the IL, and now you're going to need a replacement. So these are always things you got to consider when you're drafting players, especially in like thin positions. I think third base is kind of a thin position. Bregman isn't a 1A or a 1B anymore. He's a 1C. Him and Nico are probably the 2 best hitters in this lineup, but that's not saying much. It's not. So we'll see what they do. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of moves they make, if they continue to make any more, or if they're going to stand pat. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. I think, I just, honestly, I don't know what to think of this lineup. I really don't. So let's talk about the Diamondbacks. I know we were talking about, Ketel Marte being one of the second basemen, and a great fantasy steal for Perdomo. Let's talk about what they did. So they decided to take Ketel Marte off the trade block, right? So they figured, you know what? Let's not rebuild. Let's not tear it down. Let's try to build it again. Let's try to build something. I think it's the right move. I think they have a great young nucleus. I think Perdomo, I really think he's the real deal. I really do. I had him last year, and he just never quit. That lineup lost a lot of firepower, and he was still clicking. Same thing with Corbin Carroll. Same thing with Marte. Even though he's a little injury prone for sure, you can label him that. He's older now. So what do? So instead of selling him, they trade. They make a trade with the Cardinals, and who do they trade for? Nolan Arenado, who we knew was going to be traded at some point. A lot of people thought the Red Sox were going to be in. Some people thought maybe the Yankees would be in. The Diamondbacks get him. You know, he's got 2 years left on his contract. Now the Cardinals, they're going to receive pitching prospect Jake Martinez. And here's the other thing, right? The D-backs are also going to receive $31 million to cover the 42 left on his contract. I think it's a great deal, right? He's obviously on the decline, but last year, 237, 12 homers, 52 ribbies, 48 runs, 49 strikeouts, right? 3 stolen bases. He gave you 236 points, 2.2 a start. I mean, he was injured for most of the second half, but you also have to wonder, and here's the other part of this equation is, how much of an impact is Arenado's numbers over the years because the Cardinals lineup is just that bad. If the Cardinals had protection, a good protected lineup with Arenado, who knows what kind of numbers he would be. I think it's a great trade, personally. You get a veteran bat, you fill a huge void, and not to mention, there were other names and teams linked to Arenado. So it's not like he was picked up off the scrap heap, right? I mean, that top of that lineup now looks pretty good from fantasy. I'm telling you, right? It just makes sense, And here's the other thing, and this one is another thing, something that I was thinking about too. So you go out, you can draft Perdomo really late. I think Perdomo's the real deal. You could tell me I'm crazy. I had him last year. They lost Naylor. They lost Eugenio Suarez. He came out and he still kept going. Him, Corbin Carroll, Marte, you have a nucleus there. Two are young. Marte's older, injury prone. Yeah. Now you're adding Arenado into the middle of that lineup. That's some validity in that lineup. You look at it and you're like, wow, from a fantasy perspective, I think Marte will be one of the top second basemen off the board. 1, 2, maybe top 3. I think Corbin Carroll will be one of the top 10 players off the board, right? I mean, outfield, you always want to get one of those. Corbin Carroll's, could be a 5-tool guy if the average and the strikeouts go down, the average goes up, but it's all right. Perdomo, you could probably get Perdomo in like the 4th round. If it's a 10 team, you could probably get him in the 4th. Now you expand, you go 12, maybe the 3rd, right? But shortstop, that position is packed. It's packed. You think about it. That is one of the better positions. You got Francisco Lindor, who's a 30-30 for almost 2 years in a row. You got Bobby Witt, who I think is going to going to come in and do much better than he did last year, right? Gunnar Henderson can do the same thing. So when those names are off the board and you decide to punt on shortstop, well, look who's there. Perdomo. Not only was Perdomo one of the top shortstops in a points league or pretty much any format, he was a top 8 player in any position of baseball last year. He gave you over 500 points in a points league. 500 points. That's tough to do. He doesn't strike out a lot. Little sneaky power in there. Stolen bases a little bit, right? Had a bunch of triples, had some doubles. He's an extra base machine. Listen, adding Arenado is a great first step. You want to show everybody you're a contender. You want to show everybody in baseball and fantasy, there's still a void at first. And there is still a great free agent first baseman out there that fits this team. He's 28. He struck out like 40 times last year. And I don't think he was on the IL once. I'm talking about Luis Arias. And if there's anybody that fits that lineup, it's Luis Arias. I'm telling you. You go out, nobody signed him. I don't know why. It's almost like Josh Naylor 2.0, right? Josh Naylor, to me, so undervalued. So undervalued. I think they got a great deal on him, Seattle. Now you got Luis Arias out there. Listen, are his numbers down from years ago when he was hitting 340, 320? Yeah, they're down. The guy's 28 years old, 29 years old. He struck out 40 times. He makes contact. Like, I don't get it. If the Red Sox need a first baseman, they go out and they get Wilson Contreras. Give me Luis Arias. If I'm a Diamondbacks fan, if I'm a fantasy fan in general, Luis Arias is the perfect fit for this lineup. I'm telling you, he's just the perfect fit. You can go Marte, you go Arias, then you can go, Arenado, Corbin Carroll, probably Perdomo. Perdomo batted toward the end of the bottom of that lineup most of last year and still gave you top 8 numbers, I'm telling you, don't sleep on the Diamondbacks. Don't. It's in fantasy. It's crazy if you do. And don't sleep on Perdomo. I think, he's not going to be one of the top 5 off the board, but if you punt on shortstop, he's going to be there for you. Grab him. I'd grab him in a heartbeat. I would anyway. So that would be my game plan going into a draft. Now, on the flip side of that, Diamondbacks, now you gotta think about the rotation. You got Kelly, which I thought was sneaky good. He did have a really good year last year. He was a top 25 pitcher in a points format. Not too bad. Burns will be back late season, so I don't know if he's going to give you much help. You need an ace, man. You need an ace. You need somebody. Gallen's not the answer. I don't think if you want to get Gallen on the cheap, I won't hate you for it, but you need an ace. And I don't know what other teams are trading. I don't know what you have to trade, So those are the things that I would probably address if I was the Diamondbacks. But like I said before, just don't sleep on that team, man. I'm telling you, that's a fantasy point. If you're in a points league, that's a fantasy dream team. And it sounds wild when I say it, but it's when you look at this, like Perdomo I think he had 94 strikeouts last year in a full season. We just looked at on Arenado's numbers. He had 54, and he was hurt, but no, he had 49 strikeouts last year. Yeah, he was hurt, but he had 49. He had 54. He had 48 runs. He had 52 ribbies. Like those numbers those are great numbers. You added Luis Arias to that, and he only had 40 strikeouts, and it could be a scary team. It really could. You really need to just buff up that rotation. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about the home team, man. Let's talk about the Red Sox, right? So Mikey V, I know he's coming on. He's going to be on a little later. Let me just take a sip. I hope I'm entertaining everybody enough by myself. It's usually my buddy over here, Mikey, who has my back, but right now it's just me. Oh, it's so good. So we're going to jump in. We're going to talk. So Mikey V said last show, he figured this specific guy wasn't going to go back to Philly. Well, he was right. There he is right there. You got Eugenio Suarez. Now, the Red Sox, man. The fucking Red Sox, man. So they make a big splash, right? They missed out on Bregman. And honestly, I don't hate it. I think, they signed Suarez to a 5-year, $130 contract. He's 30. I think he's pretty underrated in the world of baseball. I think we can all agree on that, right? There are some concerns. I know his fastball velocity from the last couple of years went from 93.4 to 92 to 91.2 in 3 seasons. But on the flip side of that, his ERA, 4.18, 3.46, 3.2 last year. That's gone down, right? So let's look at his numbers from fantasy. He went 12-8, gave you 157 innings pitched, gave you 151 strikeouts, 38 walks, a 3.2 ERA, 335 points, or 12.9 a start, ranking 25th. Obviously, he did hit the IL, I want to say, right before the break, and then they brought him back after the break. But he's still a top 25 pitcher. He's giving you 12.9 a start. I think anybody that gives you over 10 a start is pretty good. I think, if you've been playing fantasy in a points league that long, we can all agree. It's pretty good, right? So 12.9 is really good. Listen, like I said, I like the signing. They went out. They got a 1B to their 1A, which was Crochet. He was their 1A. This is a 1B. Obviously, us fans, we'd like a more consistent guy, a more healthy guy, a guy that can have or already has established a starter's workload. 157 innings is not a starter's workload. You want 175 plus for that. But all in all, it's not a bad sign. You know, I'd say it's one of the most complete rotations in baseball. And what I mean by that is quality and depth. So let's take a look at their rotation, right? Now, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say the Yankees don't have a great rotation, because once Garrett Cole comes back, yeah, they have a great rotation. There's nothing wrong about that. Toronto, we could sit here and talk about Dylan Cease all day. Do I really think Dylan Cease is worth what they paid? No. Dylan Cease, he'll give you innings, he'll give you strikeouts, he'll give you over a 4 ERA, he'll give you a 500 winning percentage. That's about it. You know, is that worth what you paid for that guy? No. I mean, honestly not. Does it help your rotation? I mean, it helps the depth. Does it help it from a competitive standpoint? I don't know. I really don't know. You know, I don't hate the guy. I don't reach. That's a reach for me for that, especially in fantasy. So, excuse me. Here's the rotation. Here's the early look of it, but there's much more to this. So you have Crochet. There's your 1A. There's your 1B in Suarez. You got Gray. I'd probably put Bello 3, Gray 4, and then you have a lot of room to do a lot of other things, right? You have early. You have Tolley. Those are some options out there. You got Crawford. You still got Kyle Harrison. You still have Patrick Sandoval. Like, sky's the limit with this rotation. It really is. You know, I like it. It's young for the most part. Don't get me wrong. And when I say young, I mean Bello and Connor Early and Tolley. Like, those guys are really, really young, and that's the future. And that's what the Red Sox are basing their rotation on, the future. But I like it. I like the move. You know, I could kind of care less about Sonny Gray. He was with the Yankees. We saw what happened there. I think his ERA was over 6 for like a handful of starts at the end of the year. I don't think Sonny Gray is built for the AL East. I think Sonny Gray is a middle to low market pitcher, because to me, I feel like the stress gets to him. You know, I mean, you could say, well, with New York, he was looked at as like an ace or a number 2. It's fair. You know, that's a lot of expectation to put on yourself, but now you're not, right? Now you're not the 1. You're not the 2. You shouldn't be the 3. You should probably be the 4 or the 5. Honestly, you're in the downward spiral of your career, which I'm not to say he's bad. He's a good pitcher, but he does get hurt once in a while. And I just think he's a mid-market, low-market type pitcher. I mean, look at where he's flourished and look at where he hasn't. He was amazing with the A's. It's where he started out. He was great, you know, really good with Cincinnati, good with the Twins. Let's not forget that little spot. Horrible with the Yankees, you know, good with St. Louis. It's just those mid-market teams he just flourishes in. I don't know why. It's very weird, but I think it's because of the expectations. So I could go without that. That one I could care less. I still think he's good. I just don't think he's a top-end rotation guy. You know, when they ended up trading for him, a lot of people thought that he was going to be a top rotation guy, and he's just not that guy anymore. So that needs to be gone, right? So now you need to address your lineup. You've done absolutely nothing except get Wilson Contreras as first base, which I think is an upgrade. I'm not hating on that, not at all. I think it's a good trade. I think it needed to happen. I thought you could have got someone better. I think you could have got a Luis Arias or somebody, but you decided to make a trade for a 31-year-old catcher / first baseman / DH. Hey, you feel bad for Tristan Cassis. His days are numbered. His days were numbered last year. It is what it is. Now you got to really look around. I know Eugenio Suarez is linked to the Red Sox. I wouldn't want him. I get the appeal. I get the 40 home runs, but you know, that 220 average and 180 strikeouts, and it's tough, you know, from baseball. Yeah. You know, you give all that up for a power guy. In fantasy, you don't. I'm sorry. You know, if you owned Pete Alonso last year, second half of the year, he was horrible. He was absolutely atrocious. The only reason he finished the top 5 first baseman is because he had such an amazing first half. He hit 340 for God's sakes, and then second half, I might have been battling some kind of injury or something like that. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the issue. So, we'll see what happens with that. I mean, that's going to be interesting, Baltimore. But from the Red Sox, I think you got to make a trade. I think you got to go out and you got to trade for somebody. You have a lot to offer. You have young pitching talent. You might not want to give it up, but you have so much of it. It's like, where are they going to start? Where are they going to get the experience? You only have, you can go with a 6-man rotation, which wouldn't surprise me if they did. You think about it. Suarez only threw 157 innings last year. Maybe throw another man in, have him finish around 160, 170 without having to skip a start. Same thing with Bello. Same thing with Gray. Crochet is probably the only guy that you could go out there for 200+ innings. Everybody else, probably not. So a 6-man rotation does make sense. Now, who's a 6-man? It's going to be Kyle Harrison. It's going to be Connor Early. Is it going to be Tolley? Is it going to you have Patrick Sandoval. You have the talent. You have the people to do it. Okay, now you go with a 6-man rotation. What are you going to do with everybody else? Keep them in Worcester with the Woo Sox? Come on. The only way players get good is if they get experience. Most players, right? If you're a high draft pick and you know that these players can play Major League Baseball, then you want them to go out there and you want them to get the experience. If they're not going to get the experience, why do you have them? You went out, you go get a Ranger Suarez, you move Sonny Gray down. He should be your 4 or 5 pitcher. Bello comes your 3rd. I mean, Connor Early, Tolley, like all these guys should be in this mix somehow. You just have too much talent. You need to trade it. You need to upgrade that offense. I don't know who's going to be out there. I don't think Eugenio Suarez is the answer. It's tough. I mean, I'm a big Arias guy. I do like Arias. I love the on-base percentage. I love the no strikeouts. I love the contact. He's going to hit you 4 or 6 home runs. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you get with him. But you kind of trade that for the on-base percentage, I think. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. You're still a month away. But you need to do something, right? You can't go into the start of spring training with, you have a great rotation, but your offense is trash. And that's what it is right now. Wilson Contreras is a little bit of an upgrade over Tristan Cassis, but it's not much. No. And as far as fantasy is concerned, Jared Duran, he's probably the best offensive player on the team right now, for sure, I think. Yeah, I would say Duran, because they don't really have anybody else, I mean, Duran's a 5-tool guy. He can steal extra bases. He has some sneaky power, 20+ home runs. I'm getting rid of Devers. That's one of your bigger guys. He'll probably be one of the first Red Sox. He's probably a top 25 outfielder. So, late second, early third round type. If somebody wants to reach, then late second if it's a 12 team. As far as pitching goes, it's a good rotation. Crochet will be one of the top pitchers off the board regardless. You can make the case he probably should have won Cy Young this year for the American League. I think he should have. But Skubal did. Whatever, Skubal's 1A and Crochet's 1A. So either or, they're both going to be the top 2 pitchers off the board. They're both probably going to be in the first round. When and where, I don't know. Like I said, I do kind of like Crochet a little better than Skubal, but Skubal has shown you for 3 years now he can be consistent. So the safe pick would be Skubal. But you honestly can't go wrong with either or. Next question is going to be Ranger Suarez. He's obviously going to be the next pitcher off. He finished top 25 in the points league. Where will he finish next year? That's a good question. When he's healthy and when he's going, and he's really good. I think you could probably get him in the 4th or 5th round if you wanted to. There's just hesitation. You know, when you go from the National League East, which don't get me wrong, it's a great. The National League East is a juggernaut division. You know, talking about the Mets, you're talking about the Braves. Yeah, it's a great division. You go in there, now you're going to the American League East. I might be a little hesitant to draft Ranger a little early. I might want to see if maybe he'll fall because I don't think I'd reach for him. I think he's good. I think, like I said, he finished top 25 in the points league last year. Would I want to draft him earlier than the 4th round? I don't think so. You know, I don't know. He's coming into the American League. The American League has gotten a lot better. You know, you can make the case it's probably one of the best leagues in baseball as far as complete team wise. You know, every team except minus Tampa Bay has done something to upgrade themselves. Toronto's a juggernaut. The Yankees finally went out and got their guy Bellinger, which they desperately needed because if they didn't, they were going to be in trouble. And then you have Baltimore, who looks like they're going all in. Like, those are, and then you know you're on the Red Sox, but those are some tough teams to go up against that you're going to be playing a couple times, you know, 3 or 4 times a year each team. So, yeah, I don't know what I would do if I was, I wouldn't draft him early. That's all I'm saying. I don't think I'd draft him early. But that's just me. All right. So let's move on. So let's do one more free agent signing. Let's break down this lineup a little more. Then we'll take a break. Okay. We also have this one coming. And when I pull up the picture, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. I think it's a crime for baseball, but that's just me. There it is. We saw it coming. I didn't believe it. The Dodgers have signed Kyle Tucker. After turning down a $250 million contract from the Mets, he signs a 4-year, $240 million contract, a $64 million signing bonus, and opt-out after year 2 and 3. His numbers last year, not too bad, considering he did have a leg injury in the middle of the year. Kind of set him out for a little while. But listen, 266 average, 22 homers, 73 ribbies, 91 runs, 88 strikeouts, 25 stolen bases, 439 points, 3.2 a start. 3.2 a start. I mean, we're just talking about Bregman giving you 2.7, which is above average, right? And in a points league, if someone gives you more than 2.2 a start, you pretty much you start them, right? 2.7 is good. 3.2, crazy, you know? And to go back to my point about Perdomo, he had over 500 points. Tucker gave you 440. Perdomo was giving you like 3.5 a start. And that was someone who you either picked up off free agency or drafted really, really, really late. And I think you can get him again on the cheap. I think you can get him in the 5th round. But let's talk Tucker, okay? So we go over his numbers. Like I said, didn't have the Sellers second half, but I really am excited to see how he'll fit in this stacked Dodgers lineup, okay? We've seen throughout the years that having stacked lineups like the Dodgers sometimes doesn't necessarily mean success when dealing with personalities. But I think all these guys don't look to have much of an ego, in my opinion. I mean, when I compare stud lineups, I think of like the early 2000 Yankees, when you had people like Derek Jeter and A-Rod and Jason Giambi, and, you know, the expectations to win every year is there. The egos are there. But I think with the Dodgers, it's like the people that they have, they kind of just toss the egos away. And they're like, you know what? We just want to win. Let's just win a World Series. That's it. Freddie Freeman, easygoing guy. Mookie Betts, easygoing guy. Like, these are the guys that, hey, you know what? We're going to stay here and we're just going to want to win. We want the World Series. And I don't blame them. And that's great. So let's take a look at this lineup, okay? Here it is. Obviously, I don't know how this is going to shake out. This is just a predicted lineup, okay? You know, I've seen a couple different scenarios of people batting a little lower and a little higher. But, you know, this is probably one of the better ones I've seen. I think some of the ones I've seen is like Ohtani, Betts, Tucker, then Freddie. You know, I think when I look at this, to me, Tucker isn't a number 4 hitter. You know, Freddie isn't really, to me, he isn't either. But I think Tucker can steal, and that would be my reasoning to have him bat 3rd and Freeman 4th. Freeman doesn't strike out a lot either. But man, you look at this from a fantasy perspective. Ohtani's probably going to go first overall, right? Mookie Betts will probably be a top 3 or 4 shortstop. I think Freddie Freeman should probably be right outside the top 5 for first base. I don't think you should be reaching for him anymore. Not a good past couple years, kind of on the decline a little bit. Starting to get that injury bug. I mean, he's on the 30s. He's on the wrong side of 30, I guess, for baseball. There's such a thing on the wrong side of 30. But he might be. Tucker probably be a late first round, early second round pick, and depending on teams, depending on format. Will Smith, he'll probably be a top 2 catcher off the board. Everybody else, you'll probably get a little later, But what a lineup. I mean, from top to bottom, there's no holes. There really isn't. This is kind of why I think people hate the Yankees and hate what they're doing with baseball. But just because they have a really good lineup, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win every time. I mean, yeah, they're going to be favorites to win, and yeah, they probably might. But you look at their rotation, and a lot of question marks. Snell, can he stay healthy for longer than half a year? Can Tyler Glasnow stay healthy for longer than half a year? What's Ohtani's workload going to look like next year? I think you have to go with a 6-man rotation at that point, right? Yamamoto, 2 years ago, he got hurt and he didn't really look that good. Last year, he looked great. I think he finished top 5 in points for starting pitchers. But what's all that? What are those innings and what's that going to look like for him this year? This is a bounce back year for him. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions. Can the pitching can it maintain health? And if it can't, it's going to be tough. I think last year they got lucky because all those starting pitchers, a lot of them, they got hurt in the middle of the year, right? Snell got hurt. Glasnow got hurt. They all got hurt in the middle of the year. But you know why that's so good for that team is because when they come back, it's the end of the year and the beginning of the playoffs. So they're healthy. They're fresh. So they go out and they just dominate the playoffs, right? I mean, Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, 10 strikeouts, 6 innings, 7 innings. Yamamoto, same thing. So that, it worked out perfect for them. But what's going to happen if they get hurt at the end of the year or, 3/4 of the year and then they're going to miss maybe a couple rounds of the playoffs? It's going to be tough. It really is. I don't know what to expect. I just know from a fantasy perspective, even their rotations, most of those guys are pretty good, right? I think all of them are pretty much top 25 picks. Yamamoto will go pretty early. I know Snell and Glasnow to me are 1A, 1B. I think they're very similar. I think Snell has better upside, but they both strike out a lot of guys, right? And oh my God, look at who came, Mikey V, man. Look, I think I was holding it down for an hour.
Dude, it's not an easy task, and I'm sorry you even had to do that.
I thought I did pretty well.
I think you did too. I was listening a little bit on the way in here, and I was like, you know what? You don't need me.
Stop.
But
Stop.
What am I saying? Oh my goodness, yeah. Flight got canceled, had to book another one, timing came off. She wasn't even supposed to come in today. It's a whole thing. We can get into it later. But
well, we're glad you're here. We're glad. It gives me a little break anyways.
Absolutely.
So listen, you missed a ton of stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. I was talking about we were going to draft some of these guys, and then I was going to take a little break because I'm trying to give a little draft perspective because our fantasy drafts are coming up in the next month, right?
Yeah.
End of February, early March is usually the time frame for drafts, and just looking over some of these lineups and rotations and figuring out how much of an impact some of these other players have that would make you draft some of these other guys a little higher than what you would have. You know what I mean? Like, and for instance, I think I started the show with Bregman, and I said, when you add Bregman into the lineup, I don't think he's doing much because think about it. What did they do last year? They had a Tucker. You're going from a Tucker to a Bregman. you're going to expect a better outcome to me. So, a lot of that stuff is what I was going over anyways, when I was explaining my thought process for drafting and some of these players.
So you're saying some of these players, you're talking like a Bregman, right? So you're saying a guy like that, maybe his draft stock went down just a little bit, just because maybe the surroundings, maybe the ballpark, right? We know it's hard to hit at Wrigley Field, but if a guy like Kyle Tucker, on the other hand, we know he didn't have the best season last year, and we did put him in the top 10 for this year, really. I think he stays there because of who he's also playing with as well, right? So I think you're absolutely right. These things do matter on draft day with some of these guys going into new homes. Some guys are just set it, forget it guys. They can go anywhere. They're going to hit anywhere. But there's a few guys that went into new homes, and we don't know how they're going to perform. Like a Pete Alonso, for instance. I don't know if he really helped his stock or it really hurt it, but you don't know how he's really going to perform in the AL East over there. It's a whole different league.
And then to kind of piggyback off that is like, okay, well, now you're going from a lineup that had a Juan Soto and a Francisco Lindor. They don't have a Juan Soto over there. You know what I mean? So doesn't that impact his draft? Doesn't that impact a little bit, right? Because you're going from there's nobody comparable to Juan Soto that plays for the Orioles. Nobody's in that in talk. Lindor too. That's a guy who gave you 30-30 almost 2 years in a row. You can make a case maybe Gunnar Henderson, but we haven't seen the numbers yet from him, but he has the potential. I'm not saying he doesn't, but they don't have anybody like a Juan Soto.
Nope. And Gunnar Henderson too, I still think there's the best to be seen still with him. He's so young. Obviously last year, Baltimore took a step back, but if he can perform at a high level and then maybe get these other guys in that same lineup at a high level, not to go down too bad of a rabbit hole here, but, obviously ESPN leagues, mock drafts are back up now. There's a lot of falling names, and I got to admit, there's a few guys on Baltimore that I like to get my hands on, especially at the value that I saw him at. So, but,
I did a mock draft, and I didn't realize they had Perdomo, and I know I love Perdomo, and I hype on the value just because when I had him last year, and like I said throughout the show, they traded Naylor, they traded Suarez, and he still performed. Like he never hit a bottom. He was just consistent the entire year. And I think there's something to say about that. And I think adding an Arenado to that lineup is pretty good. They still need a first baseman. And if they do go out and get a Luis Arias for the cheap, which I think is a great spot for him to be in, because the way he makes contact, he'll fit right in that lineup. Arenado doesn't strike out a lot. Perdomo doesn't strike out a lot. Like he would fit in perfectly. And they have Perdomo going in like the 6th or 7th round in some of these drafts. And that to me is a bargain, is an absolute steal. Absolute.
Yeah, because if you look at it now, we talk about Mookie Betts, and I think we're a little hot cold with Mookie. We're, we don't know where he's going to land next year. Kind of took a step back last year. He's going to be another year older. There's some wear and tear there. He's still an elite player. But a guy like Mookie Betts, I'm noticing he's going in like the 4th, 5th round, right? So a guy like Perdomo, if you can just wait another round or two after that, you're getting a really good value for a guy that could be potentially, if not, like we saw last year, better than Mookie Betts. So it's just getting those right picks, picking those right guys, and you can get some tremendous value if you just get away from the name game.
Yeah, and then you also got to look at this, right? I mean, yeah, he had over 500 points last year, Perdomo, right? But look at it from this perspective as well, right? If you're going up and someone takes Mookie ahead of time, so he takes him in the 3rd or 4th round, like you said, and there's somebody who probably it's a different position altogether, but puts up better numbers than like a Mookie Betts or whatever, because a lot of times drafting early, you're kind of targeting positions that are a little weaker. I think second base is a weak position that might go early. Ketel Marte's, you rank your number 1. After that, it's like Nico Hornier. So there's a really big drop. So I think when you're drafting in the 3rd or 4th round and someone goes after a Mookie Betts because they need the shortstop and there's still a really good outfielder there, take the outfielder and then you can get Perdomo in the next round. It's a win-win, right?
Yeah. I think if you can get your hands on Marte early, I think it kind of sets up your draft a little bit, to be honest. Just like I said, we just opened up mock drafts. We're starting to kind of get our hands a little wet with them, right? And I definitely noticed that Kentel Marte, drafting him in like a late second, third round, it might not be the sexiest pick, especially like if you have one of those back-to-back picks, especially. So like in one of my drafts, I did the first overall pick. So obviously I drafted Otani. But on that back turn, that second, third round, you got to think to yourself, hey, I'm not going to get a chance out of Kentel Marte in the fourth or fifth round with my pick. So if I just get him here, you can really set up the rest of your draft. You can really kind of wait for guys to kind of fall to you in that kind of position too. But I definitely noticed this year already that the second base is pretty thin, especially from a quality standpoint.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about I don't know, maybe a shortstop, second base, third base player, big name. I'm sure you know who it is, but let's take a quick break, and then we'll come right back. Good to see you, Mike.
This entire military is one cohesive.
You're going back in?
There's still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? You some kind of war junkie? I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
And now the guys you just love to hate.
Trash.
It's
garbage.
Man.
It's a dumpster fire, man.
It's a man.
Come on.
It's not.
Doug and Mike are back with more Bourbon and Ball.
All right. So as I promised, we're gonna talk about. Let me change this real quick. I'm trying to. There it is. All right. I think that's it. There it is. Okay. So when you thought Steve Cohen and the New York Yankees, New York Mets were done this offseason, you were mistaken. I think we all were, right? And they could still be more dealing before the start of the season, but I think they surprised all of baseball by signing this young talent, Bo Bichette. 3 years, $126 million contract, a $40 million signing bonus, can opt out in each year of the deal, which I'm sure was intriguing to him. I'm not a Bo Bichette guy. I think signing him because you lost out on Pete Alonso might not have been the route to go, since, they're, in my opinion, completely different players, right? You have a power hitter versus kind of a average guy who gets on base. You're kind of substituting one for the other. I think the Mets lineup needs a power hitter more than they need a contact hitter, but I can understand why they did it. It is what it is. Let's also not forget Bo Bichette's numbers from 2 years ago. Completely horrible. Very, very bad. At least Alonso stays healthy and he gives you home runs, right? But Bo Bichette had a great year last year. No doubt about that. 311, 18 homers, 94 ribbies, 78 runs, 91 strikeouts, 4 stolen bases, 404 points, 2.9 to start. He was ranked 7th in shortstop. 7th. For someone that was so highly sought after, you'd expect this guy to be a top 3 shortstop. He was ranked 7th. I don't know. I don't know. It's at this point, you're kind of just spending money to spend money, and it's like you're not looking at the overall numbers. That's what I look. That's how I think when I see these signings. When I see Bregman, when I see Bo Bichette, he had a great year last year, but he was also hurt, and he was hurt the year before, and he didn't have a good year the year before. And I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. I think they needed power.
I think it was kind of just like one of those signings where it was just like, man, we have to do something. We have to make sure we make a splash. We have to sign these names. And with Bo Bichette too, it's kind of like we just talked about in your last segment there. It's kind of sometimes where you land, where it's going to just change your value. So look, and you mentioned it 2 years ago, he had a terrible year, and I was an owner of one of them. I did trade for him earlier in the year in a deal. Didn't think I was going to get that. That was just crazy talk, right? But where he was drafted, though, and at his age, I think he's 28 now, 27 in that ballpark. So you're talking 2 years ago. He's 25 years old. He's about to, really, really going through his stride. So he was drafted probably, fifth, sixth round, give or take, top 3, top 4 shortstop, give or take. And then last year, he was going into drafts, and he was one of those value guys. He was one of those guys that fell dramatically off the board. So if you got your hands on him later on, you got rewarded. I think this year you're going to find himself in the middle. I think somewhere in that 8th, 9th round in 10-team leagues. I think somewhere in that top 100, but toward really the back end of it. Because like you said, there are other shortstops out there that are ranked higher. And going into a new place in the NL East, you don't know what you're going to get out of Bo Bichette yet. He could crush it for all we know. But you just don't really know what you're going to get because of the season before last year. Then you go last year. Now you add the new team in. That's why I think somewhere in the middle between 8th and 9th rounds. What do you think, though?
I honestly think he's going to go before that. I think you might be looking at maybe a 6th or 5th.
Really?
I think it's going to depend on the position. If he's a shortstop, second base eligible, and we talked about that Mets lineup. Let's take a look at it. I mean, of course, this is just a predicted lineup. I think it's not all correct. There's a lot of people that I'd probably shift around a little differently. I think I'd bat Bo Bichette second and maybe Juan Soto third. And then, definitely it needs to be shuffled a little differently. But if you're adding Bo Bichette to a lineup with Lindor and Juan Soto and Marcus Semien, and I mean, you can even add Jorge Polanco, is a pretty decent add for them. If Pete Alonso to me is not a 1A, he's more of like a 1C, and Jorge Polanco is probably like a 1D, but they're not too far off. Like it's a really good lineup. And I think compared to the Blue Jays lineup, it's much better. And if he can find a home there and he can get comfortable there, he could potentially, I don't think he'll hit, 311 was pretty high for him. He's to me, he's more of a 280, 290 type hitter, but 25 plus home runs is not out of the realm of possibility, especially if he does bat second. Soto's batting behind him. It's
absolutely
how you arrange this lineup, and that's what's going to be the kicker. But I do think because he's in this lineup, and because it's a much better lineup than Toronto, you should see him go. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if he's one of the top 5 shortstops off the board. Honestly.
I don't know. It's going to be tough because, again, you got Francisco Lindor already. You trust the Trey Turner. I can see people maybe wanting, maybe an up-and-coming Bo Bichette at that age still with an aging-out Trey Turner. Not stealing all those bases like we used to see in years past. Gunnar Henderson bounce-back season, I think that's going to happen. I'm on that boat. I'm going to be honest with you on that. You still obviously got Bobby Witt, number 1. So there's still – it's kind of a deep position. It's kind of a good position to be in. You already talked about Perdomo. You already talked about Mookie Betts. There are a lot of names at shortstop. So it's one of those things. It's like, how much more quality am I going to get if I wait, or if I overdraft them? Excuse me, really. But going back to the Mets here in this lineup, and what Steve Cohen's doing was what I like is he's trying to put together a major league lineup. He's not trying to get scratched and trying to see if this guy's going to make it. He's going to try this prospect, right? And, we haven't talked about the next guy yet that joined the team, but, you can take a risk on a guy like that, right? Especially when you have a quality lineup.
Yeah, I mean, how I feel. So
I know. Crazy.
They go out and they trade for Luis Roberts. I don't mind it. But again, I mean, you're hoping for a bounce back. This is more of a trade where you're like, okay, you know what? The potential could be huge. But, I mean, it's such a question mark. Like, you look at what he's done the last 2 years, he's done absolutely nothing. He's looked horrible. Like, I never got the like him and Randy Rosarina to me are the exact same type player with the same height. Everybody drafting early. Everybody's holding on to. The Scott Whites of the world are saying, hey, this guy should be a top 25 outfielder. I've never seen it. I don't believe it. But you could also say, well, their production is because of the lineup they're in, right? I mean, you could say you're going from the White Sox to the Mets now. Is maybe the potential, maybe something's there. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I get the trade, but you also, I mean, I remember reading that the Mets had the best young outfield talent in the minor leagues. So now making this trade, he's going to take a spot of one of those guys that, who knows, he could potentially be a stud. You don't know, right? So now you're kind of blocking a couple guys. I get the trade. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
It's tough. Sometimes you need a guy to go to a new place before you really know, is it just because of the scenery, the team, like you said, what's around them? And maybe it just needs that spark just to have some real true major leaguers that have just been there, done that. And a Juan Soto and a Francisco Lindor. I know sometimes they had the clubhouse tensions last year with some of those teammates, but a guy like Luis Roberts, he holds himself to a very high standard, I believe. I just think he needs the motivation. And I think maybe going to this Mets team, putting him in that 9-hole, and if he can really succeed in that 9-hole, I mean, remember that rookie season from Michael Harris when he first came up, and they put him at that 9. I believe that was Acuna's MVP season. And really, when that lineup was going round, that really just put things into a monstrous season for Atlanta. So, if they can do something like that with Luis Robert, and if they can even just get to that type of threshold, this team could be a very dangerous team.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from top to bottom, and I mean, from a fantasy perspective, you have a bunch of guys that probably will go in the first couple rounds. You got Lindor, you got Soto, who will be a top 3, top 4 pick for sure. There's still some opportunity for some late round magic. I think Marcus Semien, you could probably get pretty late. We were talking about second base and that being kind of not a deep position. If you do punt on it, because there's only like 2 or 3 really good second basemen, you could take a chance on a Marcus Semien in a Mets lineup. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Marcus Semien bats leadoff like he did with the Rangers. Lindor goes second, Soto's third, Polanco's fourth, and then you got Bo Bichette fifth or something, or vice versa. Like the outcome for this is so wild. And then sixth, you go Luis Roberts. I mean, it's a deep lineup with the trades. But from fantasy, yeah, I mean, you could wait on some of these guys and probably get a pretty good deal on a couple of them. I think Marcus Semien, to me, I'm a big Marcus Semien guy. When he's right and he's in a lineup, what he can do. He did it with Toronto. He did it in his first year with the Rangers. When he's going, he's going. And, again, you can always say, well, when that last year, there wasn't any protection. Corey Seager always missed time. He never really maybe had the opportunity to get going. And let's see what he can do with the Mets. I mean, you want to take a chance with him with the Mets? I mean, I would, especially late.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head with the value with these guys. Instead of maybe drafting a Francisco Lindor, or let's just say you missed out on a Francisco Lindor or Juan Soto, even or Bo Bichette, because I think those 3 guys are going to be probably the top 3 off of this list right here. Mm-hmm. I think even like a Francisco Alvarez, if he can stay healthy, he can get you 20, 25 home runs. And all these guys, if they're at their best, should all elevate their stats along with that. So a guy like a Marcus Semien, I'll be battling you for him. I don't know when I'm going to draft him, but that's a guy I got my eye on too. I think he's fantastic when he is on. Brett Beatty. No one really talks about him too much, but he's, been in that organization now, I feel like forever. And, any year, he's supposed to be this big breakout guy because that's what they had him labeled as before. So maybe he's going to be a late bloomer. You can get him super late, maybe even undrafted in some leagues for all we know. And
he'll also be third base eligible because he'll carry that over this year.
He will. And then even Luis Robert, I don't even know where to even put him on the board. I think that's a double-digit round pick. But he's going to be available. Who knows with him? Maybe if he starts getting on base, stealing bases, cut down on the strikeouts just a little bit, then he can become more of an asset in points.
Yeah. It's a fun lineup. I mean, obviously, draft is fun. right? I think that's the best part of fantasy baseball is the drafts and the trades where we say that. So, yeah, I mean, I honestly, if I do have an early pick, Juan Soto is my guy. I would love to target Juan Soto. I would later on give me a Marcus Semien. I think I'm staying away from Bo Bichette. I kind of fell for that a couple of years ago with that down year. I drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round, and he just crushed me. He literally crushed me. Lindor, I mean, Lindor's probably a mid-second round pick, depending on the league depth you have. So, you know, it all depends how big your league is and where you're drafting. You know, I mean, honestly, if I had like a middle pick and I ended up getting a Juan Soto in round 1 and a Francisco Lindor round 2, I'd be pretty happy, if I got to be honest with you, because I love the combos right there. That's me.
I'm having a hunch in a lot of these leagues, you're going to see a lot of hitters. And then that early 2nd round, that's when you're going to see maybe the Paul Skeens, the Garrett Crochet's of the world start going off. So, you know, a mid-round Francisco Lindor, I can see slip into a mid-2nd round, especially in a 10-team league. I can definitely see that.
Yeah. Although I think, I mean, they have Skeens going before Crochet in mock drafts. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I don't get it. You know, we learned our lesson last year with the, you know, no wins, not getting those extra points, and that adds up. That adds up a lot. And I think also now Garrett Crochet being ranked, in the top, 6 starting pitchers, you know, compared to some other guys that they put ahead of him. You know, he recognized that, and he made a comment about it. So he's got some fire in him. You know, that's a guy that could potentially also, you know, win a Cy Young again, you know, be right there with Scooble, 100%.
Yeah, I did seriously scratch my head when I saw Zach Wheeler was a top 5. I mean, you don't even know if he's going to come back. I mean, honestly, he might. I mean, he probably will, but still some question marks with that injury, you know? So, and I mean, Matt Harvey had it, and look what happened when he came back. So it kind of bobbles my mind that CBS Sports, I saw that they ranked him in the top 5. I want to say 4th. Just wild. Very wild.
I was surprised by that name.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
So let's stay with the Mets for a second. They do the trade. Well, first off, they get Bo. They trade for Luis Roberts. But then they do another trade, which I think is something they desperately needed. And I think we can both agree they desperately needed because we talked about it every week last year. We talked about it. They need to go out. They need to get an ace. And what do? They trade for one. They trade for Freddie Peralta from the Brewers. It's a great trade. Young guy. Already said he'd be willing to sign long-term with them. That's exactly what you want. His numbers last year, 17-6, 176 innings pitched, 204 strikeouts, 66 walks, a 2.70 ERA, 440 points, 13.4 a start, ranking him the 8th best starting pitcher in a points league. I think it was a trade that needed to happen, and now the rotation looks much better. I think they could probably still use another pitcher, but you know, I think some of the stuff I've seen, and here's what they're looking at now is a 6-man rotation. They got Senga 6th in this. I mean, that's a great rotation. You know, Freddie Peralta, McLean is he's a stud, right? But Senga, Manea, Holmes, Peterson, those are more all 4 and 5s. You know, if they go out and they get a Framber Valdez, that shows me they want this. They want it. You know, you go Framber Valdez, Peralta, McLean, then you can go, Sean Manea, Senga, Clay Holmes, or and then move Peterson to the bullpen like he was last year a little bit. Now you're built. Now you're done. You've had an offseason where you went out and you filled every single hole you needed to fill in your lineup, in your rotation. You're good for the playoffs if you get a Framber Valdez. Not to say you're not right now. I think your offense is perfect. It's great. But the hole is the rotation.
Yeah, about Freddie Peralta, I think this guy's going to be a top 5 pitcher this year. And it's crazy to even say that like that. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's what I'm drinking right now, but I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Whatever it is, I'm drinking the Freddie Peralta Kool-Aid. I only say that because he's become one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball. Just looking back at his stats here, I'm looking at the 4 of the last 5 years. He's had at least 27 starts. I think a lot of guys early on, they're trying to get their feet under themselves. They go through injuries, they go through inning limits, right? This guy is now 30 years old. He's going to be 30 years old this year, and he's hitting his stride. He is in his stride. He's in the midst of it right now. This guy is a professional major league pitcher, and that's exactly what we said. We needed them to do something. We thought it was probably going to be Framber. Maybe it still is Framber. We don't know. But that was a big move, and I think they moved fast on it because I think the Yankees were close. I heard Freddie Peralta, sounds like it's coming down to it. And then I saw a report saying, hey, guess what? Mets just threw their hat in the ring. And then 45 minutes later, I see the notification. So I think it was maybe a little bit impulse move, but I like what they gave up for him. It wasn't like a crazy, haul for him because he is on this 1-year deal. So it is just kind of a freebie, for instance. And then now it sounds like they're going to sign him long term. So it's like one of the best moves I think the Mets made all offseason. Better than any signing that they've made so far. This was the number one important move they needed to make.
I played devil's advocate, and I'm the Yankees right now. I would, you talk about a rotation. I mean, God, you have Garrett Cole, who's probably coming back after the first month of the year, right? Then you go to Max Fried, then you go Freddie Peralta, then you go Carlos Rondon, then you go Slittler. I mean.
Yeah,
man, I'm telling you, I'm sure they're kicking themselves because they're at a point. I think when you look at their team, it's like their rotation's good, their offense is what are we gonna do? Are we gonna try to get a couple more guys for the offense, or are we gonna try to win games with our pitching? And if they went out and they did get a Freddie Peralta, then that would tell me, you know what, they're not doing anything for offense now. They're done. They're gonna try to win games with their pitching. They didn't get him. Now what are they going to do? They're going to make some trades. They're going to try to sign Eugenio Suarez. Ryan McMahon isn't going to be the answer. Volpe's out for who knows? They say he might even be out for half of the year. Not to say he was even good when he was healthy last year. So they have a lot of question marks. And we're going to talk about somebody that they just signed that they needed to sign desperately. But it's going to be interesting to see where they're going to go too. But I think for the Mets, yeah. And as far as fantasy and Freddie Peralta, oh, man, it's tough. He might go right after that run of, like, true aces, I think. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, someone's going to draft Crochet. Someone's going to go Skubal. But that next round of aces is going to be Yamamoto. Then I think you'll see Peralta go in that second run. I don't think he'll be there in the initial run. I think you can get him maybe in the late second, early third if there's a run and it's a 12 team. If it's like an 8 or 10 team, maybe the fourth, But I mean, it's still a really good spot for him.
Oh, absolutely it is. Absolutely. I know. I think he's going to do just fine. He's going to settle in nicely. Still in the National League, still familiar with it, understands he's playing for a very competitive team now, a chance to win, just like he was in Milwaukee. They were the best team last year, record-wise. So he's a competitor. He's a gamer, and it's going to be great. But like you said, with the Yanks, though, it's like who knows what's going to happen. They're so up in the air, right? They're just kind of old school, and I think that goes all the way to Brian Cashman. The guy's been there for ages. So I think there needs to be a change. I've said that last year. I said that the year before because it's the same playbook with them. And it's getting a little dull. And I feel like the evaluation of talent is just sometimes just not there. I think Jazz Chisholm, to be honest with you, Doug, not a fan. Not a fan. Got all this swag, all this. He bats 217. He goes in these ridiculous slumps. He strikes out. But people think he's great. Not for fantasy.
O'Neal Cruz, same thing, man.
Yeah, Ellie De La Cruz, same thing. But she with the strikeouts, strikes out too much. So still overrated. The Yankees team I think is overrated. Who did they sign? They just signed, the let's talk about it. Let's talk about Bellinger for a second, right?
Oh, look at this.
Let's get right into it.
All right. Well, let me pull it up here. Let me see what we got cooking here. Where is he? There he is. All right. So, I mean, like we had just talked about, right? They go out and they do something that they probably desperately needed to do this offseason, and that was to re-sign Cody Bellinger. I think if they don't re-sign him, they're looking worse than they are, right? It's Judge and nobody else. Nobody else. So I think they go out and they get him. They did what they needed to do. 5 years, $162.5 million contract. I think that's pretty good deal. I think that's a great value deal for them, to be honest with you. You know, gets a $20 million signing bonus, full no trade. He can opt out after the 2027, 2028 years if he wants to. You know, his numbers last year, 272, 29 homers, 98 ribbies, 89 runs, 90 strikeouts, 13 stolen bases, 463 points, 3 a start. Those are great fantasy numbers for a points league. I mean, you can't go wrong, right? I mean, we all knew that their rotation is kind of is what they're leaning on this year because Cole's coming back. But, you know, offensively, I think even with this, it's really not a scary lineup. You know, I have the lineup right here. And if you want to take a look, it's like you talked about, you know, you got Trent Grisham. Now you're hoping Trent Grisham can reproduce the year he had, which probably not. You know, Aaron Judge will be Aaron Judge. Then you have Bellinger, but then, you know, Ben Rice, Stanton is even going to be healthy for how long? You know, Jazz, Ryan McMahon is not the answer. You got Jose playing shortstop until Volpe comes back. Who knows what that looks like? And then Austin Wells, who's, you know, Austin, he's a good catcher. I'm not going to take that away. Fantasy perspective, probably don't own him, but, you know, it's not a scary lineup. Not at all.
No, it's not a Yankee lineup. I feel like this is not a New York Yankee lineup. But I'll tell you what, though, if you ask a New York Yankee fan about Ben Rice, I'll tell you, they think he's going to be the next Babe Ruth. They think this guy's going to be, you know, breaking out this year. So in saying that, I'll keep a pulse on him. If I can get a good value for him, I'll definitely scoop him up, stash him, see what happens with him. But I'm hearing, you know, these guys are juicing him up like he's Babe Ruth. It's crazy. But like I said, though, like I look at the rest of this lineup: Ryan McMahon, Jose Caballero. Like those guys, they're not going to produce. They're not crazy. I mean, even where they came from, they weren't even producing there, and they came from very, very small market teams. So same thing with Trent Grisham. He had a great breakout last year. He really in that first half too, but then kind of faded off a little bit. And now you're asking him to repeat it, really. And you know, you could come up with a way better leadoff lineup. You know, even like a Luis Robert would have been something for the Yankees to do and get and play with and experiment with. And it's a name. It's a bigger name, like a name that could potentially, especially playing at Yankee Stadium, could be awesome if he ever put it together. But I look at this and it just says, no, this looks dry. This looks like it's old. It looks like looks like they didn't even try this offseason. And I feel like they got lucky with Bellinger because Bellinger had multiple offers on the table. So I just don't understand why the Yankees haven't made that move for a Corey Seager or, you know, a Jose Ramirez even. You know, I know we're going to talk about him in a second later, but, you know, just a bigger, you know, top 5, top 10 player name that can fit into that lineup. That's all I'm saying.
Corey Seager, that's an interesting one. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that would be a really good fit in this lineup. Honestly, you Corey Seager, you know, where it would fit, I probably would bat him 4th. Honestly, he's got the pop to bat clean up. That's
I would bump Ben Rice to number 1. I would have him lead off. He led off last year a bunch of games.
Yeah.
So bump him up.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the Rangers, they're not doing much. You know, I mean, I know they traded for that starting pitcher, but and their rotation looks really good. I mean, don't get me wrong. You got Nate Eovaldi. You still got Jacob deGrom, who, you know, was a top 5, top 10 pitcher last year. So fantasy-wise, and Eovaldi was like a number 1 pitcher for the first half of the year until he got hurt again. So the talent's there, but that offense is just so lackluster, and that's another thing is like you're drafting these pitchers like a Jacob deGrom as like a top 5 pitcher, but the flip side of that, their offense is so bad, they're not going to get wins. You talk about Paul Skeens and you talk about the Rangers too. The only way a Jacob deGrom is going to go out and get you 10 wins is if he's going to pitch you 10 complete game shutouts. Really, that's it. That's how it is. So to me, it's interesting that they really didn't do much this offseason. They traded Marcus Semien. They got back up pretty decent. I like Acuna, Luis Acuna or whatever, but he's a shortstop guy, right? Why not trade Corey Seager, get some people for him, put Luis Acuna at shortstop. That fills that hole. It's not a bad idea. Corey Seager's injury prone. When he's healthy, he's good. He bats over 300 when he's healthy. I think it was 336 at some point last year. Yes. Doesn't strike out a lot. Has that sneaky pop. It would make sense. But then again, it's like, okay, well, we're basically getting the shortstop Giancarlo Stanton because that's what he is a shortstop version of Giancarlo Stanton. Just always hurt, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a good move. If worse comes to worse, if he does get hurt, Volpe should be back by then, hopefully. But yeah, I get it. That's interesting. That's a very interesting trade.
Yeah, what do you think of that Mackenzie Gore trade?
I didn't hate it. Like I said, I think that's a good rotation. Come on, that's a really good rotation.
It's sneaky good.
It really good. You have potentially like 2 top 10 pitchers in Eovaldi and deGrom, and then you're adding McKenzie, who could be a top 20. If you can put it all together, that's really good. But then, like I said, you look at the offense, and they've done nothing. They've lost Marcus Semien. They're really putting their weight on like the younger guys, and you're hoping like Josh Jung, and they can all put it together and they can stay healthy, but. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I will say their rotation will keep them in the games. For sure. Their rotation will do that.
Yeah, they're going to have to bank on like a Wyatt Langford to really start jumping up and producing and like becoming like this monster stud. Like you said, Corey Seager. Don't forget they got Brandon Nemo in that Marcus Semien trade too. So
yeah,
it's not like we said, I like things sexy, I want to see like the big names. I want to see something like well crafted put together. But I feel like the Rangers are going through a little bit of a transition. I feel like they're hanging on. Like they know they could potentially win the division still, but it's not the strongest division, even though Seattle's making a little push to step away from the other teams right now. But they still think they're competitive enough where like they want to keep their rotation intact. And they want to have somewhat of a competitive offense, but it's got to stay in the field. That's the problem that they have. It doesn't stay on the field. Everyone gets hurt. Josh Young, Evan Carter, Corey Seager, obviously. Like these guys just, they just can't stay on the field. But if they can stay in the field, are they going to be good? That's still up to debate.
Yeah, it would have been a really good fit for them too, and it's a shame that they didn't try to maybe put it together. Is going out and getting a Josh Naylor. I feel like he would be a pretty good staple in that lineup, especially you got Nimmo, Naylor, Seager. Like, at least it makes you competitive. Right now, it's not a competitive lineup.
Who do they got at first base?
They had – I thought Wyatt Langford played like a platoon. Like they were giving him at-bats at first, and then they gave him outfield for a little bit.
I want to check this out because I'm kind of curious because, what about a Paul Goldschmidt going to Texas? Can you see him just signing with Texas for a 1-year deal?
Anywhere he goes, it's going to be a 1-year deal. I can tell you that. Oh, they had Nate Lowell.
No, he got cut.
Yeah, they had him for a little while. For most
right now, it says the roster. It's Jake Berger, Jock Peterson, and Duran.
Yeah.
But I think those guys could be replaceable. Interesting.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, I'm not impressed with this team. I'm looking at their rotation. I'm looking at their whole lineup. It's all right. It's not bad unless someone magically emerges. I don't know. But it kind of seems like a mid team to me. I think it's still Seattle's division to lose.
Yeah, I agree. But all right, let's so we talk about the Yankees. We like the move. They desperately needed to do it, and I think we can all agree on that. Let's talk about another well, I don't think it was like an extension. Let's talk about an extension. Which I thought was kind of crazy, right? There he is. There's the man. There's your a top 4 fantasy pick. So it's official. The Cleveland Guardians will waste Jose Ramirez's entire baseball career. They will waste it. Listen, they signed him to a 7-year, $175 million contract extension, which is, I think, well below his value. The deal will keep him in Cleveland until 2032. And since he's already 32, 33, it will be the last contract of his career. So it'll make him a Cleveland heir for his entire career. He has a no trade clause. He has bonuses for finishing the top 5 for MVP voting. Now, can you please build a team around this guy? Sign or trade for good players. You had something special. You had something going with Lindor and with Naylor. You know, they're gone. You never address the holes. What do? Now you sign him. You extend him. Do something, man. His numbers last year with no help whatsoever, except Stephen Kwan, who batted leadoff. Still 283, 30 homers, 85 ribbies, 103 runs, 74 strikeouts, 44 stolen bases, 552 points, 3.5 a start. He was ranked number 1 in third base overall. He was a top 5 in any position. He puts up those numbers regularly with no protection. And that to me is wild. He's a Hall of Famer. When it's all said and done, you just wish that they would go grab some good players. I'm happy they didn't trade Stephen Kwan. I think that kind of tells me they still think they have a chance in a weak division, but they need to do more. It's just silly, in my opinion. Like, I get it. Like, yeah, if I'm a Cleveland fan, I wouldn't want him to go anywhere else, and he wants to stay at Cleveland. And he's staying at Cleveland at a really below the market value for him. But now with all that money you're saving, you should go out and you should start building a team. And the fact that they haven't, it's kind of just, look, I'm scratching my head. I don't know what's going on over there. I really don't. No idea. We'll talk free agents in a little while, but what are you going to do? You're going to go out, you're going to sign Luis Arias, you're going to sign Gino Suarez to DH. You still have options, but you're not going to do anything. Let's be honest. Cleveland, the Guardians are going to do absolutely nothing. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Not impactful enough to make justification of the signing, I guess, unless they use this money ahead of time to actually spend it and get someone else, or maybe 2 people, or make a deal. I think they have a pretty decent farm system, and that's why they're starting to move some guys around a little bit. So, who else do you go out and get? They really have to find their identity still, I think, with this team. And I think it's slowly coming together. You got a base with Jose Ramirez. You know what you're going to get with him from the leadership standpoint and from a production standpoint. I do think Gavin Williams is going to take a step forward this year. I really do. I think he's really going to anchor that rotation. Obviously, they saw something in Bieber's arm that said, you know what, we're going to move him now. We're not even going to play this song and dance with him, and we're just going to get whatever we can for him. And I think that's going to work out for them in the long run, to be honest with you. It looks like he's got some issues still with his arm, so they definitely saw something ahead of time, and they made a move on that. So I think they're slowly starting to piece things together. I just don't think they're there yet to make that big splash, though. I just don't think they're there yet. I still think there's a foundation they still need to build to justify making a big splash. So the guys that are left on the market right now, like you said, of Luis Arias, or, do you throw a Paul Goldschmidt into that lineup, for a platoon player? Like, is that what the direction they want to spend their money in? Or are they going to wait and build that foundation first, get a couple more guys that are pretty concrete, hopefully, under their organization, and then go out and maybe spend some of this money that they clearly saved on Jose Ramirez? 175 for 7 years? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's like an Acuna deal with the Braves when he first signed the $100 million contract. So Dude, he must be the most loyal baseball player of our time right now. It's wild. But, for his sake and for Cleveland's sake, I do hope they have a plan for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because if he ever did hit the free agent market, I mean, you're talking about a guy who could potentially get, 250 million easy. Even at 32. I mean, simple. Because he just there's no signs of slowing down. I do like the rotation. I do agree with Gavin Williams. I think Tanner Beebe is a little underrated. He might be he could come out and he can dominate a game at times. I will say, I do like Stephen Kwan. I think he's a top 15, 20 outfielder you could probably draft and doesn't strike out a lot. Other than that, though, it's like, you look at everybody else, and everybody else in the fantasy world, you can get really late. Manzardo. I mean, he had a great first month, but after that, it was really nothing. So, I think they do need a good first baseman. I Goldschmidt. Yeah, I think their identity is a team that makes contact, that puts the ball in play, and it doesn't strike out a lot. And for me, Luis Arias does kind of fit that mold for them. So if they do end up making a splash, I think that might be the guy to do. He's 28, still fairly young, believe it or not, and. I could see Arias go there. I could see him go to Diamondbacks like we talked about because they have that void from losing Josh Naylor. But we'll see what happens. I do hope they do sign somebody because I think, for his sake, I think they'll still be competitive because it's just such a weak division. But, even last year, they go from a team that, was almost making the World Series to still made the playoffs, who – manager of the year candidate for sure. But, now you've done nothing but get weaker. I think you'll still make the playoffs again this year, but you're not going to go far. Not at all.
Nope, I agree. Yeah, I still think it's Detroit's. Kansas City could bounce back too. They start off strong. They can still be competitive in that division, but it's just a weak division. It's not even enjoyable.
I think Kansas City has the better offense. If everybody can hit, they have the much better offense, But we'll see what happens. And so let's we're talking about re-signing, salary arbitrations. Here's a strange one, right? Minnesota Twins avoided salary. They agreed to terms with Joe Ryan for a 1-year, $6.2 million contract, which is really peanuts in the realm of baseball salaries. Pretty good year, 13-10, 3.6 ERA, 171 points, 171 innings, 194 strikeouts, 39 walks. Really good year last year. Had his best season as starting pitcher at 29. He's, probably entering his prime, you'd say. I think it's odd that I don't know what they plan to do with him. I know they decided that they weren't going to trade him, but they also aren't going to trade Buxton. They're not going to trade Pablo Lopez. So I really think they hope they can make a push in this weak division. But something tells me if they're 5 games out and, it's halfway point, you're going to see those guys out the door, all of them. I think, it'll be a fire sale. I still like I like their rotation. I like Pablo Lopez. I do like Joe Ryan. I do sometimes think he's a little overrated just because he'll go in and he'll pitch you. He'll look amazing for a couple months, but then there'll be a couple months where he doesn't look amazing and he'll give up those runs and clunks and kind of draws him down because I know at one point his ERA was like a low 3 last year. And then he went through a pretty tough 3-game stretch in like the last quarter of the season. Saw his ERA jump. I don't know if it's just because he was at like 170 innings and that was becoming a little too much. But yeah, I just find it odd that they decided to just stand pat with all these guys. Really, and they have Correa still, who they're going to be stuck with. I don't know what their plans are or what they're going to end up doing, but it's kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, their offense is definitely lackluster. I mean, their rotation is as lackluster as their offense. It's a very mediocre, sub-mediocre team. It's not very good. And I guess Joe Ryan at that dollar too. You know, if things really do go south, and you know they're not going to extend Joe probably. I can't imagine them doing that because I don't think they're going to be competitive. That's a trade chip right there. Even though it's a 1-year deal, it's not going to cost money. The guy's going to still bring value, and you can still get some, decent prospects back. I'm just looking at the top 100 prospects going into 2026, and it looks like they got 3 top 100 prospects. One of them looks like in AAA. He's probably going to break into the major leagues. He plays outfield. That is Walker Jenkins. What a baseball name that is, Walker Jenkins. Remember that name. Yeah, so he's on the verge of coming up, and he's 6'3", 210. Like this guy, I'm just picturing this country boy right now. And I hope Walker Jenkins is that country boy that can come in and maybe do something about it, right? But they had a couple other guys that they did call up last year too. You'll still see them in that lineup. It's those middle infielder guys. Luke Cachel is one of them. I think he's going to be maybe a sleeper at second base going into drafts too. So he's a fun name to look out for. They had really high hopes for him, and he played pretty good baseball toward that second half of the year when he got called up. So there's a little bit of promise, but you know what? You still got to put a product out in the field. You still have to put, fans in the seats, and, the guys that they held on to, it's still an attraction. So Byron Buxton, he can be the most electric player on the field at times when he's healthy. Joe Ryan, yeah, maybe a little overrated, like you said, but, there are times where he's just the dude. He's just the guy out there. So we'll see closer to June, July, see where they're at, and then I can see them being big movers. They got rid of Rocco Baldelli this offseason. They brought a new manager in, so it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out for them, and especially if it starts going down south early, you might see them scramble a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they could still. I mean, Joe Ryan in the Diamondbacks uniform. I mean, they need pitching. If they're in it, why not? Why not make the splash, right? But we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, man, we're getting ready to end this show now, and I did talk about at the beginning we were doing our live draft. So I know you had said the March 13th. One of the guys said he might not be able to make the 13th. So I put the poll up, what are you able to do the 6th or the 13th? And unfortunately for that guy was Dwayne. So far, everybody's saying they can do the 13th except for him. So, yeah, I figured we could do either or, so I didn't put us down for a vote. I'm just waiting on everybody else. Yeah. I have 5 votes. No, I have 4. So I have 3 and 1. So we're still waiting on 4 more, but I'm pretty sure that it'll be the 13th. And yeah, I don't know what Dwayne plans on doing. He could also, I mean, it's 2 hours. He doesn't have to be there for the whole draft. Maybe he can escape for what he's doing for just an hour and just maybe make his top 15 picks. And then after that, just kind of auto draft it. I mean, that would be my suggestion to him. But I don't know. I mean, I feel bad. I try to make it work for everybody, but unfortunately you can't. And you go with the consensus, and it looks like March 13th, Friday, 8 p.m., we'll be doing a live draft. That's it.
And I'll be with you.
You will. You will. You'll be right on the side over here.
That's right.
Yeah. Back again.
Back. Maybe even Adam.
That's right. That's right. And his wife did give birth yesterday.
Oh, congrats. Wow.
So, yeah, I did want to say congratulations to him. I did ask him if he would. I texted him out of the blue because I wanted to see if he was interested in doing the Bourbon N Ball League one more time. I wanted to bring back some of the people that didn't win, maybe have a chance, mix in some new people in it, see if they have a chance. So he said, oh, definitely. And I said, oh, great. And, if you plan on coming down, I think we're going to do the draft around the same time we're doing our money league draft. And he said, yeah, what are the dates? I gave it to him. And he goes, all right, well, I'll think. He's like, I'll let you know. He's like, my wife's getting induced right now, so I don't have time. I said, well, congratulations, man. Let me know. You're still more than a month away, so don't even worry about it, buddy. So,
wow, good stuff.
Yeah. But all right, man. That's that's it, Mike. I'm glad you made it for at least half of the show. Anyways, I was dying over here.
Nah, you held yourself. You always hold yourself great. What are we talking about? You're stunned, bro. You got this. You had it.
What am I doing, man? I think I'm wasting my talent at my job. That's why. But all right, man. So so for Mikey V, I'm Doug. This is Bourbon and Ball. Look at, I already did. I finished my drink. So you can finish your drink now. Go to bed. And we'll see you. Mark it down your calendars. March 13th, 8 o'clock, live draft, 12-team, head-to-head points league. It's going to be fun. If your drafts later on, at least they'll give you some pointers on where people might go. That's why it's good for strategy. But we'll we'll see you then. All right? Take care, guys.
Life is like a duck. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Here at Military Broadcast Radio, we're teaming up with our friends at Die Tired, the veteran-friendly music band spreading strength, resilience, and mental health awareness one shirt at a time.
And check this out. Their brand new shirts feature broadcast beaker right on the breast pocket. A reminder that you can weather the storm, and you're never alone.
Shirts are only $25, and proceeds support giving veterans a voice. MBR's mission to teach veterans how to podcast and videocast. Because when our vets are talking, they're not overthinking. They're not second-guessing. Together, we stop the 22 stigma. Grab your shirt today at mbradio.us and hit the shop. Or go directly to toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband. That's toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband.
Suit up. Stand strong.
Remember, we're unduckable together.
You're built tougher than the storm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.